Now, what better place to start with money, expenditure of money? Sometimes the government doesn't seem to have any money. At other times, money is no object. But the focus of the first element of the news today is the police, who are clearly going to get more money, but to what effect? Charles, tell us what you're looking at.
Thanks very much, Brian, and good afternoon, everybody. Yes, indeed, plenty of money, your money, being spent by the government, and we have news of an uplift in funding for police. But this follows in some way a segment from last week in which we looked at fraud in particular as being a very pressing concern of police. So how are they going to spend this? You see on screen now, 843 million to better protect the public. And if we just click on one, we'll see the detail of this, which suggests that over £200 million will go into priority projects like violence reduction units. So, Brian, I don't know if you can advance it one. Thanks very much. As well as dedicated policing efforts to tackle county lines and antisocial behaviour. Again, to refer back to last week, we saw in actual fact there'd been a decrease in antisocial behaviour. The next bit takes some beating in a sense, in that they refer to the success that they have had and state that in combination with GRIP hotspot policing, an estimated 136,000 violent offences have been prevented. It's not entirely clear how they're arriving at that figure or indeed substantiating it, but nonetheless, they seem to suggest that this money will be spent correctly. Further to this is the announcement that there'll be £922 million available to the police and crime commissioners, suggesting that the Home Office does indeed watch UK column news, because this was talked about exactly last week, and not just the uplift of 20,000 new police officers, but the critical part being retention. So whilst they might boast that numbers are at an all-time high, it's a question of being able to hang on to them and how realistic that might be. Now, related to this is what's called a super complaint has been submitted to His Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary, and it refers to Section 60 of the Criminal Justice and Public Order Act, which essentially is an authorisation for search without suspicion. So if we click on one, we'll just have a look at what a super complaint is. And that's made by a designated body that a feature or combination of features of policing in England and Wales by one or more police force is or appears to be significantly harming the interests of the public. So the next slide just shows how the complaint itself raised by the CJA, entitled More Harm Than Good, talks about the suspicionless stops and searches, but also the overall policy of stop and search powers. So I thought we'd just take a quick look at Section 60 itself, which is on the next slide. So if we can advance one, and we'll just look at how it comes about, which is that an officer of the rank of inspector or above may authorise its use if they reasonably believe that incidents involving serious violence may take place in the police area, or that persons are carrying dangerous instruments or offensive weapons without good reason in the police area, or that an incident involving serious violence has taken place in the police area and a dangerous instrument or offensive weapon used in the incident is being carried, so that this would help in finding them. Now, it's perhaps reasonable to imagine that such a belief could exist based on intelligence, but probably what we should do is look a little bit into the past, into the abuse of such powers, that being suspicion or rather searching without suspicion. The most obvious example being Section 44 of the Terrorism Act 2000, which was repealed back in 2012. So I've got here a short piece from Statewatch analysis, which refers back to a 2010 ruling by the European Court of Human Rights. So if we just click on one, we'll see that they determine that the Terrorism Act breaches privacy rights afforded by Article 8 of the Convention on Human Rights. Section 44 gives police power to indiscriminately stop and search people without reasonable suspicion. This is in part because the police have too much discretion over when to use this power, and insufficient legal safeguards are in place to guard against its misapplication. Now, I don't mean to suggest that there's the same identical risk in terms of Section 60, But in effect, it's something that's gone on for a long time and it can be widely applied. Now, the reason that the funding piece at the start of this ties in is that there is a large amount of money being given to what are called violence reduction orders. And one of these things is the Serious Violence Reduction Order, the SVRO, which you can see here being reported by Locally News. Merseyside Police are carrying out a trial period. And in a nutshell, this enables police to search without suspicion somebody who may have been involved in a previous incident involving a knife. Now, there isn't time to go into all the detail now, but what I would leave you with on this segment is the title of an article that I'd written back in May of this year, which was all about searching without suspicion, and in particular, the Serious Violence Reduction Order. All this relates to Section 60 and indeed the money that can be made by police forces by putting themselves forward to tackle serious violence. So exactly like you say, Brian, money being spent in large quantities, but to what effect?
And the idea that an organisation like the police or indeed the local authority can make money depending on how it uses government grants and government funding, I find one deeply worrying.